Today on the Clock Tips podcast. Two, which is called the glymphatic system. And it's fascinating to me because this is a system of your brain. It helps to clean up your brain while you're sleeping. And so if you have a short amount of sleep and sleeping at night, might I add, not just taking naps in the day, but sleeping at nighttime. So if people are not getting sufficient amount and hours of sleep at nighttime, their glymphatic system won't be activated and it won't do its job, which is to remove metabolites or waste products from the chemical reactions in your brain. Welcome to the Clock Tips podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Richardson. Thanks for joining us. Technically, time is objective. This means that wherever you go around the world, 60 seconds is the same. Why is there such variability then with how we use and perceive our time? A research study called Midbrain Dopamine Neurons Control Judgment of Time, led by a team called Cheryssa and others, found some really interesting findings in mice. What these scientists found is that when they controlled how much dopamine these mice produced in their brain, and if you don't know, dopamine is a type of molecule that helps you to feel good, they were able to see that mice either overestimated or underestimated how much fun they were having in their test, depending on whether or not dopamine was being produced. So if we were to translate this study to humans, what this pretty much means is that if we're doing something that is enjoyable or fun, because there's more dopamine release happening, we might not realize how much time has passed. Basically, underestimate time. But if we're doing something boring that we don't like, we might think there's way much more time going by than actually is, or overestimating time. In addition to feeling like you're having a good time, changes in the amount of dopamine released in the brain is linked to circadian system disruption. What this means is that when your clock is not working well, your body might not produce the same amount of dopamine as it normally does. Some of these changes are associated with depression and stress. I'm here with my guest. Her name is Cheryssa, and she's a second-year medical student. Welcome to the Clock Tips podcast, Cheryssa.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Welcome. Yeah, so as a medical student, how do you perceive your time or use your time? Like, do you feel like you're running out of time for studying, or do you manage it well? And, depending on what your answer is, like, why do you think you either do it well or don't do it well?
Yeah, I think as a medical student, it can feel like time is just really short because it's like I have all this studying to do. Well, first I have my lectures and then I have all this studying to do. And then I still want to be a person. Like I might want to work out or go out with friends or something like that. And so I think what I found is that time management is the only way that I can stretch my time. Like if I don't have everything scheduled, then it'll feel like I have no time. But if I schedule my things that I have to do, then somehow it feels like I have more time. Um, but yeah, it does feel like there aren't enough hours in the day.
Yeah. Would you say that you feel like you're enjoying what you're doing, or it's stressful for you?
Um, it's stressful, but I'm enjoying it, which is kind of weird to say. I mean, there are definitely moments where I'm not enjoying it and it's just stressful. But then there are other moments where, I don't know, things are a bit slower and I get to pause for a second and realize that I am enjoying what I'm doing, um, and just be grateful for it, which can be hard because it's like there's just so much to do. And sometimes I just want to be lazy and I don't want to do anything. Um, but that's not always the case. But yeah. I
Yeah.
also think perspective helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know right now there's a lot that I have to do to get the career that I want in the future. And I know that in the future, hopefully my time will feel like my own and I won't be on someone else's schedule or a schedule that's been created for me. So it's kind of just like, I don't know, mindset as well.
Right. Okay. So out of the clock tips, the tip stands for time, intuition, productivity, and sleep. Out of those three things,
Mhm.
which one of those do you find most challenging for you in your daily life?
I would say when I'm at school, sleep can feel challenging sometimes because I just feel like there's always more that I can do. I mean, because when you're dealing with so much information, it always feels like you should be studying more, or maybe you should spend more time on this topic or something like that. But I remember when I was starting med school, like during orientation, they told us that we should never compromise sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really tried to hold on to that and just be like, okay, I'm not going to compromise my sleep no matter what happens, even if I feel like I need to study longer, like for more hours before an exam or whatever. I'm never going to pull an all nighter. I'm going to go to bed. And that's something that I've tried to maintain throughout med school. But then the issue comes when I'm supposed to be sleeping, but my brain is studying,
Mm,
or I'm still
yeah,
thinking about what I'm supposed to be doing, or the fact that I don't really understand this topic and the exam is tomorrow. So I feel like sometimes sleep can be the most challenging for me,
yeah.
um,
I
because
mean,
it's like even when I want to sleep,
mhm.
I can't.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a couple really good points that a lot of people struggle with, I think. Which is, well, struggle with and are important. So, firstly, yes, sleep
Mhm.
is super important for memory, memory
Mhm.
formation. So, just go into sleep so you can remember what you studied is very important. But then also, anxiety and stress of your daily life and just not feeling like you have enough time to complete things can keep you awake. So it's like, two sides of a coin where I need to sleep so I can perform well, but because I have so much to perform on, sleep is elusive.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, I do think a lot of people struggle with that, like with insomnia and things like that, because there's just so much stress throughout the day. And sometimes I do think it's because we expect too much of our bodies or our brains. Like we expect that the whole day will be stressed and constantly moving, and then it's like as soon as I put my head down, I should be asleep. And that's not really how it works, because it's like even though we may be ready to go to bed, our brain is still, I don't know, high on energy from everything that was going on in the day. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And one thing that I like to use in my life or share with others is this idea of trying to quiet your brain before you go to sleep. Not just saying, like, stop talking, brain, but maybe even just say, all right, firstly, how was today for me? And try to like stimulate that dopamine system a little bit, the make you feel good system of your brain by saying, look at all the good things I did today. And then the things that you have to get done tomorrow or still need to get done that you think you need to get done today, just write them down
Mhm.
somewhere and say, all right, I did good today, and tomorrow I'll do these other things. Because, yeah, a lot of times we go to bed and we just have so much on our mind. And this is something I personally learned when I was in grad school. Like, if grad school is one big day, it would last for years, right? And then
Mhm.
you would just keep doing and doing and doing. And, like, that's just not practical. So I had to learn the
Right.
skill of what's enough for today, and tomorrow is another day.
Yeah.
Have you got any better at measuring, like, how much should I get done today? Do you tell yourself congrats for what you did? How do you see all that?
I do think that I try to congratulate myself in some ways. Sometimes it's just like, oh, I'll get food today for myself, or Chipotle is my reward for myself. So I'm just like, oh, I'll get some Chipotle today. And it may seem like small, but somehow for my brain, it's like it does wonders.
Yeah.
Um, I think that I have gotten better at measuring, like planning out. So, say an exam is coming up, I do think that I've gotten a lot better at creating a study plan for myself so that I'm not just trying to do it all in one day.
Mhm.
And I also think I've gotten more honest with myself on how long it might take me to unwind.
Mhm.
So usually I'll try to finish studying by 9 p.m. every day so that
Mhm.
I can like unwind, do my nighttime routine, and go to bed. But on exam night, I try to do like 7 or sometimes it ends up being earlier because my brain is just like so over it, cannot even process any more information.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I have gotten more realistic and just like, okay, I know that the night before an exam I'm gonna be extra stressed. So let me just stop studying earlier. So
Yeah.
I do try to plan for that so that I'm not leaving everything until the day before or the night before. Hmm.
Right. And that's great. And also brings up a point in my brain, kind of like what we were talking about before, time perception, as well as what you said with expectations. And so I think a lot of times maybe people are not having good measurements of their expectations and their abilities and pairing those things
Hmm.
together for the time that they actually have. So there's, actual time, and there's like what you want to or expect to accomplish and being able to actually do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, when we plan, it's important to be realistic and make realistic expectations that we can achieve, which is something that helps our brain to realize that we're winning at life, which is kind of like a positive feedback
Hmm.
mechanism, which keeps us going more. So, the more wins we have, the more our brain feels like it can win and do things to help us to win. So, it's
Yeah,
it's
and
a good strategy to figure out how to use your time correctly. Yeah.
yeah. And I also think that it can be comparing yourself to other people sometimes. Like I know some people who say they can fully function on 5 hours of sleep.
Mm.
I am not that person at all. If I get 5 hours of sleep, my whole week is gonna be ruined. Like I need at least 8 hours. Yeah, so I think just knowing yourself and knowing how much sleep your body needs and what it needs to be able to sleep as well. Because, there are some med students that can pull all-nighters before exams and still perform well.
Mhm.
I have actually never pulled an all-nighter, so I can't say that I'm not that person, but just based off of like the fact that I need at least 8 hours, I'm gonna hypothesize that I'm not that person. And so I'm just gonna make sure that I get my sleep and organize my life so that I can make sure that I get that before an exam or every night actually, because I need sleep every night.
Yeah, you brought to my memory some things that I've learned from my own research. So before that, even people who pull all-nighters or say that they could operate on a few hours of sleep, oftentimes they're not. They're probably caffeinated or pushing through the fog, which is what I call it,
Yeah.
because the studies out there like have not shown that 5 hours is sufficient for anybody.
Mhm.
And then when you say, they're pulling all-nighters and they seem to function, reminded me of my research with mice where I disrupted their circadian rhythms tremendously. And even mice that are in like complete light, which, they need a day-night cycle like humans do, those mice will still get up and get active every single day. And it's not
Mhm.
because, their environment is supportive of that. It's just that, at some point they have a drive to do things, but are they happy about it? Not from my research. No, they're
Mhm.
not. So we could
Right.
actually like walk and function to some extent, but is it optimal? Is it something that our body, is like useful for our body? Usually it's
Mhm.
not, right? So that's the funny thing about sleep, right? A lot of people can like go without it for some amount of time, but you really don't feel like yourself.
Yeah. Two things actually came to mind as you were talking. The first thing is that when you said people are caffeinated, that makes so much sense because for me, I don't drink caffeine or any caffeinated beverages, and so like if I don't get my sleep, that's it. That's all I have to go on. Whereas for some of my classmates, they might, get coffee or Celsius, how many ever they need to like get them through the day. Since I'm not going to be doing that, I have to get my sleep. And that just it goes back to like what works for you. And then the second thing that came to mind was how we often think of short-term effects, but not long-term effects.
Mhm.
Because I had a couple friends that did research on the connection between sleep and Alzheimer's.
Mm.
And like there's a
Mhm.
connection between how much sleep you get and like your likelihood to develop dementia in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
And so it's like, even though right now it might seem like, oh, they're able to function, they can do this, that, and the other on like 4 hours, 5 hours. Yeah, like today, but how about 10, 15 years in the future? How is
Yeah.
that impacting their minds and their bodies? So,
Yeah, absolute. Caffeine, for those who may not know, it blocks the receptor for adenosine, which is something that builds up in your brain over the course of the day to tell you that you're sleepy and it's time to rest. And so just because you people block that signal doesn't mean that the body doesn't need rest, right? Beyond that, what you mentioned about, that Alzheimer's and dementia risk, due to, poor sleep habits when you're younger. There's something that I learned about that I'm going to talk a lot more about in the future too, which is called the glymphatic system. And it's fascinating
mm,
to me because this is a system of your brain. You might take the term lymphatic out of there, right? It helps to clean up your brain while you're sleeping. And this works in a circadian manner, meaning that the circadian system tells the body what time of day to activate this system. And this system is activated when you're sleeping. And so, if you have a short amount of sleep and sleeping at night, might I add, not just taking naps in the day, but sleeping
mm-hmm,
at nighttime. So, if people are not getting sufficient amount and hours of sleep at nighttime, their glymphatic system won't be activated and it won't do its job, which is to remove metabolites or waste products from the chemical reactions in your brain. So your brain is here going hard at work every day. And then if you don't go to sleep at night, you're not doing it justice by like maintaining it and keeping it clean, basically. So I like to
mm-hmm.
think of people having a dirty brain if they don't go to
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah, actually, based off that, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that system works on the circadian rhythm
Mhm.
and it has to be at night.
Mhm.
So for people who, so actually there are two groups of people that I want to ask this for. So the first are people who work at night.
Mm.
How do you think that impacts their brain? And then second, for people who are nappers, like, do you think that napping is a good, I guess, replacement for sleeping at night?
Right. So the first question about shift workers, basically people who work at night. One thing is that we cannot hide from the sun outside. And whether or not we have our blackout curtains and all of these things, our body
Mm-hmm.
knows when it's actually day and actually night. And will be constantly fighting with us to get back on that track. And for anybody who has
Mm-hmm.
traveled to different time zones, you easily feel this effect because you're become jet lagged, which is basically your body knowing that the sun started to come up at a different time based on what you're used
Yeah.
to. And so when people work at night, they're in this constant fight with their body and it's recognizing of the true day and nighttime. And so their circadian rhythms are really out of whack, to be honest. And there's a lot of research that's coming out that show negative health impacts of people who work at night. A lot of these studies
Mm-hmm.
were done in nurses, which, notoriously have a lot of night shift workers there. But yeah, there's nothing good about it. But then your second question, napping, right? Leads me back to the research that I'm doing. I created a light dark paradigm, which basically has napping in day and nighttime. The naps, quote unquote, for the mice that I use for my study, they're extensive. So they would technically be like 4 hours. So not a little 15 to 20-minute nap, which is okay, by the way. But sleeping in the day. I want to make sure those two are different because people sometimes think they're the same, like 15 minutes versus an hour to 2 or 3 hours of sleeping in the daytime. Two different
Mhm.
things. So, napping or sleeping in the day is bad because that really throws off the circadian system. You're reducing adenosine, the drive, and maybe throwing off some of your hormones, and it's going to be hard to sleep at night if you actually sleep in the day. But napping, in the sense of 20 minutes or less during the day, I would suggest it before 4 p.m. so it's not too close to
Mhm.
bedtime. That's okay. If you're just having like a really rough day or whatever and you need to take a nap, make it short, no more than 20 minutes, because really what happens is
Mhm.
that your your body starts to go into the cycles of what happens during sleep. And once you
Mhm.
get into those deeper stages of sleep, your brain really has to go through those stages to feel good again. And that's about 90 minutes. But in any case, you'd misplace that in the day and your body gets confused and starts to do things in the wrong way.
Yeah, I have to say that I was definitely one of those people that my nap would more be like sleep because I needed like an hour or two. Or sometimes I would even try to do the 20 minutes, but I would snooze my alarm so much that it would end up being an hour.
Yeah,
But now like I've started to kind of practice the 20-minute nap
yeah.
and I actually do like it better.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like in my head I'm just like, "Oh, I really want an hour." But in terms of how I feel after getting up, after an hour or 2 hour nap, which is not, now you're telling me that's not a nap. I feel like groggy. I don't know, like I needed to sleep even more than that, which is crazy because it's daytime.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but after like a 20-minute nap, I wake up just feeling like I don't know, refreshed, like I can actually do what I need to do,
yeah.
which would be my reason for taking a nap because it's like, oh my gosh, I need a second. The day is a lot.
Mm,
And so I feel like the 20-minute nap for me does achieve that better than the 2 hour nap.
yeah. And I think like my take home slash tip on this subject is really think about protecting your nighttime sleep, right? And as you said, you know that it's important. Think about protecting the almost want to say sanctity of the nighttime sleep time and doing whatever
Mhm.
you can to protect it because it is that important to your daily function. So anything that would mess that up, like sleeping in the day or having caffeine late at night and things like that, avoid those so that you can definitely try to get that nighttime full rest because that's really when it's most effective for your body and it helps your body the most and all of that. So, and then people also just need to think about why do they need to have 1 or 2 hours of nap sleep in the daytime, right? Is it because you didn't sleep
Yeah.
at night, right? It goes back to the same thing. So,
Mhm.
what is the biggest thing in your life that you said you've tried that's worked well for you when it comes to this topic?
Having a shut off time or a cutoff time. Yeah, because I think in college I didn't have a cutoff time and also consistency
Mm-hmm.
because in college it was like I would maybe get 8 hours one night, but then I would go to sleep at 3 a.m. another day.
Mm,
And then, like, I would just be all over the place with when I would go to sleep. And then I also didn't have a cutoff time. So it was kind of like I would put my book down and then just try to jump in the bed.
mm.
No. I think that my sleep etiquette is just so much better in med school because I've been intentional about it. And so I think being consistent and also learning my body because when I first started being intentional about my sleep, I tried to go to bed at 10 and I don't think that really worked for me. I think
Mm.
I don't know what the research says, but I think that somehow it's a little bit better for me to go to bed at 11.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wake up, I just feel better than trying to go to sleep at 10.
Yeah.
And then being consistent about when I go to bed,
Mm.
even on weekends, which is
Yes.
very difficult because
Yes.
I remember like in college on the weekends, my friends we'd be up talking until whatever hour in the night, and then on Monday I would be struggling.
Yeah.
But having discipline on the weekends as well really helps me just with staying consistent and having good sleep hygiene. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Hmm.
I enjoyed our conversation today, Cheryssa. And
Me
I know
too.
you're a super busy medical student, so I really appreciate you taking the time out to come and speak with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today. Please visit our website at clocktips.com for more information about this podcast, how to join our ongoing research study, and more resources to help you improve your time intuition, sleep, and productivity. If you found this information helpful or interesting, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with others and join the discussion on our social media platforms under the handle at @myclocktips. Until next time, take care of yourself.